Scott from Maxwell's Garage. Today, it's rainy and cloudy and thunderstorms rolling through. It's a real dreary day here. So, we got a little quick video for you. On the Jeep TJ, it's a 98 TJ we've been playing around with, we got a check engine light on. And that check engine light just came on, the car's running good, no problems with it, we're not using more gas than we normally would, doesn't seem to be hesitating, doesn't seem to be idling funny, doesn't seem to be running funny at all. This has happened 3 times since we bought the vehicle about 7-8 weeks ago. Got about 1,000 miles on it since we bought it. Really haven't done hardly any work to it at all other than strip some parts off of it for another TJ project that we have going on. So the other day when the check engine light came on, I checked back to myself and said, alright, when we first bought the car, it didn't have any codes or it didn't have any check engine light on, so I plugged the scanner in and it had a pending code for an O2 sensor. Reset the codes, let it run through, all the monitors came up, everything was good, drove it for a few hundred miles, out of the blue, check engine light came on. Same one, O2 sensor. Usually when it's an O2 sensor going bad on you, or you have a bad reading from an O2 sensor, you'll start to notice the vehicle run a little rich. And that's usually because the O2 sensor, when they fail, they tell the engine, or they tell the computer that the engine's running lean. So in an effort to protect the engine and not let it run too lean, it puts more gas into it. By putting more gas into a car that doesn't need more gas, what happens, it runs real rich and you get horrible gas mileage. That wasn't the case, so I said maybe it's just a hiccup in the computer or the battery or whatever it might be, and I reset it, and we drove it for quite some time, probably around 700 miles or so, and the other day, check engine light came on. So today, being a rainy day and not wanting to work outside too much, I figured we'd go over what to do with a check engine light. Now, I know a lot of car guys, myself included, were afraid of cars with computers. Yes, we were afraid, because computers required special equipment, special knowledge, maybe some formal schooling or formal training on how to get them fixed right when they're messing up. And even my newer vehicles, and new for me is 15 years older, so my newest vehicle is an 03. But the new vehicles, when a check engine light would come on, I would just say, you know what, don't care what it is, don't know what it is, and just bring it to the mechanic and having him fix it. And the mechanic fixes it and he gives you a bill accordingly. Never had any problem with changing the brakes, doing the oil, even swapping some big parts out on the old cars. Heck, we could do anything, right? Car guys can do anything on the old cars. Engines, transmissions, taking the body off, putting the body back on, rear ends, front ends. It didn't matter on the old cars, we could do it. The computers didn't scare us away. Especially with the old cars, the forums were phenomenal. I know that I use TeamChevelle.com for all my Chevelle stuff. Team Chevelle forum is a phenomenal forum because they have a lot of categories. They have a category for engines, they have a category for transmissions, rear ends, electrical. Everything you can think of, they got it broken down into categories, even a category for just general bullshit. They call it bench racing, and I love that term. That's what car guys do when they hang out and they bullshit. It's bench racing. But what I did notice on the Jeep forums, and the one that I was using was JeepForum.com, what I did notice was they didn't really have any categories. It was just Jeep, TJ, getting to my model, technical forum. And searching that technical forum sucks. There's no other way to say it. Like the forum, there's a lot of good information there, but it really sucks because it's hard to search. There's just so much information in one category that it's almost impossible to search. So when you start searching things, especially like a check engine light and a TJ that's running good, it's very hard to narrow it down. So I did some of my own research and I did some Googling and I did some YouTubing. And I call that Google tubing. My kids get mad at me for calling it Google tubing, but that's what I call it. And I did learn a little bit about the O2 sensors and the different monitors that came up, and a little bit of education online. Most people will realize that computer-controlled vehicles aren't that scary after all. No reason to be afraid of them. If you could narrow your choices down on what's wrong, you could usually get the thing fixed without throwing parts at it and just throwing parts at it and hoping that that's what it was. So let me get my old man glasses on. What I did was I went out and I bought a code scanner. I was borrowing code scanners from friends for a while, and I said, you know what, I'm using this thing enough where I should have one of my own so that I could actually use it when I need it, right when that check engine light comes on. And I bought this one. It's called an AutoLink AL319, made by, I'm going to say Autel. It's AUTEL. Okay, maybe you can see it there. I believe this is some kind of Taiwan or Chinese brand. It says patents pending, but it's a pretty basic scanner. What's nice about this one is it'll show you the code. It has done every vehicle that I've plugged it into so far. It'll also show you live data, and it'll also give you the freeze frame, which is what the vehicle was doing when it threw the code. And a lot of times that could be a lot of help too, because you could tell whether it was cold, whether it was warm, whether you were driving, whether it was during acceleration or under high engine load. It gives you that information, and taking that information based and knowing what the vehicle's doing, a little Googling and a little common sense, and you can sort of narrow it down pretty good. Another trick is if you got a friend that's got a similar vehicle, in our fleet we have two TJs, one in 97, one in 98, and a lot of times you could narrow it down to a part but not be 100% sure, and you could swap it with the known good part. Can't do that right now because the other TJ my daughter has 500 miles away in Virginia at school, so we're down to one TJ, so we can't swap parts, and I don't just want to throw money at it and buy parts and not know what's going on. So that O2 sensor code through 3 times. The vehicle's running right. So what we'll do today is we'll just plug this in. We'll see what it was doing when it threw the code. I know the light came on right after startup a couple nights ago. That doesn't mean that that's when the code was thrown. A lot of times it'll throw a code and it'll put it in a bank called pending codes. And that pending code won't pop up until it holds that pending code, and that pending code stays and doesn't clear itself in a certain amount of restarts, and that all depends on what the code was and what the vehicle is, and a lot of other stuff that, to be honest, I don't know about. So we'll take a look at it, being it's raining. We'll see if we can narrow it down, see if we need to make a repair, or we're going to reset it again and see if it pops again. The vehicle's running good. It gets really awesome. It's a 4-cylinder Jeep TJ98, and it gets about 14 or so, 14 and a half miles to the gallon around town driving. Whenever I take it on the highway and mix that up, that around town with a little bit of highway driving, it usually goes a little bit over 15. And how I'm determining that is by how many miles I'm going, based on the odometer and the margin of error, because the tires are a little bit bigger than the factory tires. So I use a calculator and I figure that out of how many actual miles I drove and how much gas I put in the tank, based on the size of the tank and how much gas was left over, and then I do the math, and I come up with, right around 14, a little higher than 14 miles to the gallon, which I'm real happy with, because everybody told me before I bought my first Jeep that actually ran, but before I bought it, they said, you're nuts, they get horrible mileage. But coming from a family that has 2 Suburbans that average around 9 miles to the gallon around town, and a big block Chevelle that averages around 6 miles to the gallon around town, and an old Chevy pickup truck that probably gets 8 miles to the gallon around town, 14 is pretty damn good. I'm happy with that. So we're going to go out. I got some, I always have tents set up right outside of my garage so that we can work outside even when the weather's a little crappy. And when we have the tops off the Jeeps, we can pull them in under the tents and they don't get soaked when we get a downpour. So we'll go and we'll plug this in. We'll start the car up. We'll look at the freeze frame data and the live data, and we'll see where we can go. I have the scanner plugged into the OBD2 port. Real simple to use. You plug it in. It comes up, lights up because there's power in that port all the time. Turn your key on. Oh, let me turn the radio down and the windshield wipers off. You turn your key on and it gives you a choice of what you want. You want a readiness test, you want to know about the code scanner, you want to go to setup, or you want to go to the OBD2 diagnostics, which is what you want to do. So you hit enter. Alright, what it's going to do now is it's going to cycle through the different types of systems there are, because this, like I said, this unit you can use for just about any OBD2 car. It's going to give me a little red exclamation point that's telling me that I have a check engine light on, that I found the code, and it's going to give me the option to read the codes, erase the codes, view live data, view freeze frame. So the first thing we're going to do is read the codes and see what code it is. I'm assuming that it's going to be the O2 sensor again this third time. We go to stored codes, pending codes, and it's a stored code that we're looking for, so you just hit enter. Reading codes, please wait. I did find that in the Jeep, it is a lot slower. I guess the computer in the Jeep is a lot slower than in the GM cars that I've done. But it pulls the code up. It's a P0135, which says O2 sensor heater circuit Bank 1 Sensor 1. Well, this is a 4-cylinder, which only has Bank 1. Sensor 1 is the sensor, the first sensor, which is forward of the catalytic converter. Sensor 2 is the sensor behind the catalytic converter. They also call them upstream and downstream, so this would be the upstream O2 sensor. And it's the O2 sensor heated circuit, which is exactly what it was the previous two times. Now, because the car is running good, I believe that the O2 sensor heated circuit just might have some kind of hiccup. I know the battery in this vehicle is a little weak, and sometimes it struggles to start and turn the motor over, and I'm wondering if that struggling is sending a little hiccup through the system, or maybe the O2 sensor is just going. Could be a wire that's going bad, could be a connection that's just not making full connection all the time. I don't know, but the vehicle's running good. So what I want to know now is, what is it doing live? So checking the live data is important. So what I'll do is I'll start it up, I'll let it warm up, I'll grab the camera off the tripod so you can see exactly what it's saying on the screen for live data, and then make a determination on whether or not I think, and it's always a little bit of a guess, I think the O2 sensor is bad or just a hiccup in the system. Okay, I don't know if that screen's coming out. I can't really see it on the camera. Try to get it on a little bit of an angle maybe. But here's my check engine light code, P0135. Alright, I'll hit enter. I'm going to go back to the previous menu, and I'm going to look at my freeze frame data. Alright, the freeze frame data will show what it was doing when the check engine light flew. So here we go. It was P0135. It was in open loop, so it was probably right after startup before it warmed up. 5.5% load on the engine. My coolant temperature was 78 degrees. So yeah, it was cold. My fuel trims were at 0. My RPM at 896, so it was just after startup that it went, which would help me indicate that maybe that weak battery is causing this little hiccup, because it's actually running really good. There doesn't seem to be any reason for it. So if I back out of this, I can scroll back around and look at my live data. So while I wait for the live data to load, I don't know why this isn't coming out good. I hope you can see it on the screen. Alright, I'm going to look for the complete data set. Hit enter. Alright, so right now what I have here is an open loop fault, it's saying. And I've never seen that before, so I'll have to Google on that. Open loop fault. My load, 4.7, 5.1. That's about right. 5.5. That's about right for my idle load. My coolant temperature is 170 degrees, so it's just about warmed up, not fully warmed up yet. My long and short fuel trims are at 0. So they're not moving, they're not giving any feedback. So I do have some kind of error in here. My MAP PSI 1.6. My RPMs in the high 700s, not hitting 800. Oh, there's 811, 803, but mostly in the high 700s. That's the normal idle speed for this, around 750 to 800. Speed, of course, is 0. Spark advance bouncing around between 10 and 15, which is about normal. Intake air temperature is 129. It's a cool day today. Throttle position 18.8. That's without putting your foot on the throttle. That's your normal idle throttle position. That percentage is about right for this vehicle. Now, if I look on my O2 Bank 1 Sensor 1, that's that upstream one. Alright, it's moving between 0.8 and between, oh, there it goes down a little bit, up. It's not reacting as fast as it should be. If you guys can see it on the screen, it's moving, but it's not really reacting as much as it should be. And if you look at my downstream O2 sensor, the sensor 2, it's not doing anything. It's stuck at 1.
And that would be the same thing if it was stuck at 1 as if you had it unplugged. So there's a chance that I could have a melted wire going to that O2 sensor, or it's not connected at all. The odd thing is that that's not throwing a code. Sensor 1 is throwing the code. And that's it. I still got that open loop fault. It's warming up a little bit more. So I definitely have a condition with my O2 sensors. Sensor 1, the upstream is giving me the code. Sensor 2, the downstream, is not reacting to anything that's really going on. Now if I give it a little bit of gas while it's in live, I should see those O2 sensors move around, and that downstream O2 sensor is not moving at all. So there's something funky going on that is going to require a little more research. But because the vehicle is running right, what I'm going to do now is I'll get out of this, I'll go down to the previous menu, and I'm going to scroll around to erase codes. So when you erase the codes, it's also going to erase your freeze frame data, which is okay, we know what that is now. Now sometimes it won't erase the code when the engine's running. We're going to see what's going on. Erase failure, turn key on with engine off. Yep, there you go. So, turn around. So my check engine light's still on. Turn the engine off. Make sure we got the key on. And then we'll come back down and erase the race done, then key to continue. So the codes are erased. Check engine light is not on anymore. And let's start it up and see what happens. See that battery? That battery is really on its last legs, which could be contributing to whatever's going on. I'm going to need a battery one way or the other, so I'm going to have to get one. So we'll go back over here to our live data. Now I got the, if you notice right here where my thumb is, the orange triangle. All that is indicating is that the monitors have not come in yet, and that's because we would just reset the codes. And when you reset the codes, you're always going to get that until your monitors come in. Once you get all your monitors in, then the green check mark will come on. Unless you have, of course, a check engine light, then your red exclamation point will come on. So here's our view data. We want a complete data set. All right, and look at that. Now that I cleared the code, I no longer have that open loop fault, and I'm now in closed loop. So now that I'm in closed loop, let's see if the oxygen sensors are doing their job. My short shift trim was moving around. My long shift trim isn't. Shift trim. Why do I call it a shift trim? Fuel trim. Map at 1.9, RPM is the same, vehicle speed 0, spark advance is the same, intake air temperature has gone up a little bit, throttle position's about the same, and my O2 sensors, my upstream sensor 1, the one that threw the code, is moving around like it should. Sensor 2, that didn't throw the code, is still reading at 1 volt. That means that thing is not sending any real live feedback back to the PCM. So something's going on with that. But now it let me go into closed loop. So that upstream O2 sensor that did have some kind of fault in it is doing what it's supposed to do now, but it's the downstream that's not throwing a code, that's not giving me any real-time reading, and my long-term fuel trim is still at 0. Let's see if it changes with some RPMs. Now you would expect that you would have something there in the long-term fuel trim. Here's my 2 O2 sensors when I give it gas. Alright, well when I give it gas, that secondary O2 sensor actually does start to move around. So it's not disconnected, so the wire didn't fall off. Looks like it is functioning.
Alright, back from out of the rain. Hopefully, when I edit this video, those readings that were on this code scanner will come up on the screen. They weren't coming up on the display on the video camera, which is odd because I had done it once before and they did come up. I don't know whether it's so gloomy outside and this is so bright it wasn't focusing in, or maybe they'll show up on the screen. I just couldn't read them on the display on the camera. I can take my old man glasses off now. Hopefully I'll get this situation worked out. Like I said, the vehicle runs fine. Resetting the code got rid of that fault that was in that open loop fault, and the vehicle immediately went to closed loop. The O2 sensors, that upstream one that's causing the fault or causing the check engine light seems to be operating normally based on the voltage readings it's given. It's the downstream one that seems to be real sluggish to respond and real slow to respond. That could be because I'm not driving the car and it's just idling in the driveway. Because when I did give it a little bit of gas, as you saw, up to about 2,500 RPM, it started to react a little bit, just not reacting as much as I have normally seen with the Jeep TJs, especially the 4-cylinder Jeep TJs. The one that we worked on over the summer was pretty reactive. So it's something to keep an eye on. I'm not overly concerned with it because, to be honest with you, the thing's running fine. Troubleshooting it is sort of like a puzzle, and I like to figure it out. Like I said, I'm not looking to throw a lot of money at it. I want to try to diagnose it and not just buy parts and put them on and hope it works. So we'll go for a couple days, we'll check, and we'll take it step by step. Like I said before, if anybody wants to give me some suggestions on this, or how to go about troubleshooting it in a more formal way, or a more proper way, or if somebody's got some experience about this particular code or had a similar situation, comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to think about it, and I will definitely get back to you on what I come up with this Jeep TJ. That's it. Rainy day today. That's it for Axel's Garage. We'll see you next time.